everyone. Good afternoon. I do this thing in my classes where, well, we're actually required to by the school, but we do this thing where I greet every kid as they come into my class by name. And one day I decided to pull up a list of all the languages you could greet in, and then the kids had to guess the language. So I speak many languages now. I'm very, fluent in that one word in all the languages. And if you want a story, ask Lolo. So, just a little bit of context of who I am and why I'm here. No, it's all good. So, my name is Shani. I am a high school biology teacher, hence the green. I believe green is the universal science color. You guys can debate what color is maths and English after this session. But I teach high school kids. I work with kids every day of my life. But before I taught in mainstream education, I taught in a little cottage school. It wasn't branded as a special needs school, but the way that it was set up was very accommodating to special needs kids. And so I have a little bit of experience with special needs classrooms and things like that. Of course, none of that makes me equipped to stand here. The only thing that makes me equipped to stand here is that I love the Lord. And we all do, and we love his kids, and we want to see his kingdom come for every child, not just the ones that are neurotypical and or fit into our bubble. So before we get started, I'd like to split the class. So everyone, show me. I said no, smack dab. You and Kate are in the middle. So you go that way, and Kate goes that way. But everyone from there. So on my left, your right. You are going to be tasked with reading this next sentence on the board. Are you ready? Yeah. There you go. This Bible verse. So please read that Bible verse. Yes, and Okay, that was challenging, right? Now the other half of the class, please read this part, that verse. Thank you. Read it for me. Let not come to me. And do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these. Beautiful. Wonderful. So this half of the class would typically be receiving the accolades. We'd see them as the kids who are participating. We see them as the ones who we want to invite and have at the front. But that's because their job was easier. When it comes to special needs, oftentimes we don't understand that this is the challenges our kids are coming into classrooms with. Sorry, I'm such a teacher. Who's church. Sorry, Donnell. I'm so aware. I'm like, oh, lessons, classroom, church, word. So we must be aware that a lot of our kiddos are already coming in with a challenge. And we can't begin to understand what it must feel like to sit in a room with people who can read perfectly while they can't, while their words are backwards and upside down. So where do we, as children's ministers and team leaders, where do we fit into making the gospel accessible to everyone? So what is the heart? The first thing we need to remind ourselves of is all students, all kids are made in the image of God. And whether culturally, I come from a typical Afrikaans background, so jy klap 'n kind reg, right? Jy trek jou sokkies op en jy's beter. But all children, be it with disabilities that we can understand or special needs or whatever we can understand and makes more sense to us, or the things that we don't understand fully or was never spoken about in our context, all of them were created in the image of God, right? So the word says God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them, male and female he created them. And so regardless of the challenge that kid walks in with, they are the imago Dei, right? They are the image of God. And so we instill them with that inherent value before we even start teaching. And then the other thing that we must remember is we are not here to preach to 80% of the kids who sit in front of us. We are here to share the gospel with 100% of the kids. Not 100% of them will respond, but that's not for us to decide. But we mustn't hinder them from coming to Jesus. The word says, when Jesus saw this, he was indignant. It's very few times that Jesus was always indignant with the people who thought they were better, right? He was very, very little indignation towards people who were humble. And he said, let the little children come to me and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of God belongs to such as these, right? And so the kingdom of God ultimately belongs, like such a teacher with my proppies. So when he speaks about this, he's saying that the least of these, and that was the context, right? When he was saying this, it wasn't just that it was children, and we see this as face value, he was speaking about children, but we also need to understand culturally, contextually, he was referring to the least of the least. Children were nothing in the days of Israel. They were meant to be seen and not heard, ne? And so when Jesus gave value to children, he was giving value to the least of these. And so sometimes when we work with special needs, especially I think that now in mixed age groups, when the least of these get lost, and I say the least of these in quotation marks, right? When they get lost in the crowd, or they become the problem we talk about every Sunday, and they become the gossip under the children's ministers, we are excluding them when Jesus would have sought them out. All students have inherent dignity and value, and I think this is really important. You said it so well, Danielle. Angela, you said we don't give up on kids, right? On the contrary, those parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable. That's such a big word. It means it's not just, we hope we reach them. No, they are core, central to the gospel. Inclusion isn't extra, it's core to ministry, right? So those parts of the body that seem to be weak are indispensable, and the parts we think are less honorable, we treat with special honor. If one part suffers, every part suffers with it. If one part is honored, every part rejoices. And then, this is so good because I've been praying about children's ministry in various contexts this whole year, and every time this verse came up, and it's come up like 4 times today, so that's incredible. We are investing in the future generation. We might only have access to Jerusalem, but our children might and do have access to Judea and Samaria, right? Where they go into classrooms. So not just our children, especially our special needs kids, they're going into children with often in classrooms and spaces with other special needs kids. And I promise you, those families, they seek churches that accommodate them. And they've been isolated from spaces because their children don't have places to go. And so it's so important that we realize that when we're investing in children with special needs, we are investing in the kingdom. So that verse has come up all day. Nice, okay, goed. So where do we begin? And what are some common special needs that we might see in children's ministry? Now it is different. Some ministries are set up to be more accommodating to certain needs. So at Helderberg, we're very fortunate. We've got a lift. So we don't have an issue with accommodating people with physical disabilities. That's not always the case. So it might be that you as a ministry need to partner with other ministries in your community that are more equipped to deal with physical disabilities. And you, as a church, that's part of a community, but also part of a larger family, needs to equip yourself with other ministries if your church can't handle, I'm speaking specifically about physical disabilities. However, what are some common things that we will see in our classrooms, either diagnosed or undiagnosed, oftentimes undiagnosed? So ADHD is a big thing. Difficulty sitting still. Now, this is not a 3-year-old who's struggling to sit still. A 3-year-old is going to struggle to sit still. They don't have the bandwidth for that yet. But we're talking about a kid who is often moving around. Even when they're trying to sit still, there's a form of movement. Impulsivity. So you're thinking, what made you do that? I can't fathom why you just did that. That often could be indicating ADHD. Easily distracted. Again, children are commonly distracted. So we need to be seeing if it's a larger problem than most. And even as I'm speaking, I'm sure specific kids are popping up in your head, and that's okay. It's good to recognize what their struggles are, because we all have them and we want to accommodate them, right? Forgetfulness. Struggling to remember the memory verse, struggling to bring their Bible, struggling to remember if they took their, they bought 5 toys in this morning and they only took 1 home, and those type of things, right? Forgetfulness. And then emotional ups and downs. Big joy, laugh, bubble, whatever, doesn't get picked for the game, breaks everything down, right? So that might be common in ADHD. In girls, it is often different to boys. So you're going to see a lot of emotionality. They're going to be really sensitive. They're going to feel maybe hurt or offended or rejected really easily. That often is a sign of ADHD in girls. And then ASD, or autism spectrum disorder. This is a big thing that we're seeing, and what's incredible is that we're seeing people becoming more accepting of those children in what we would have typically called mainstream spaces. What is some of the things that we can see there? Difficulty with eye contact or social cues. So one of the things that I learned at school is a lot of kids with ASD struggle with context. So they don't understand that now is a quiet time, okay, right? Because they don't have the idea of context. Preference for routine. So when we're doing something fun and they freak out, we're like, we don't understand, it's fun, but it's out of their routine, right? Sensory sensitivities, repetitive behaviors. So that could be, they keep throwing the ball. Why do they keep throwing the ball? Because that to them is therapeutic. That's a form of stimming. Special interest. So that one kid, your grade 1 kid with ASD, might really like that one grade 7 boy who's super cool, and he doesn't want to leave him alone. And your grade 7 boy is getting irritated, but that's because they've formed a special interest. And then challenge with transitions. So we were playing a game. Now we need to sit still, and we can't make that switch. We were sitting still. Now we need to play a game, and they can't make that switch. So these are some of the common challenges that we see in Kids Church, and we're going to talk about what are some things, some practices that you can put in place to help support. Obviously, each child is different, and you will know. I'm going to give you a time at the end. Oh, ek voel raar, it's very intimidating up here. Thank you. We'll give you some time at the end to just talk about your personal context. But for now, let's look at some best practices in terms of inclusivity. So the thing is, I've called it the macro scale and the micro scale. So there are things that you can do that include the whole church or just general behaviors. And then there are things you can do in your class as it comes up or in preparation for your message. So the first thing is knowing our students. I can't tell you the difference you have in respect, authority, rapport, is that the good English word, that you have with a child you know and who knows you versus a child who doesn't know you. So insist they wear name tags so you can name them so that they feel, or if that's not a thing, say, I'm so sorry, what's your name again? And if you have to do it every Sunday until you remember that kid's name, do it. Because when you know them, you get to have conversation with them and Like, you have authority then. If you don't know them, you are nothing to them, right? Because they only have, they trust who they trust. Often kids with ADHD and kids with ASD struggle with trusting adults, and so they have to know that you know them. Then, I just need to check my notes. Am I saying everything? Greeting, so that's really, really good. Asking questions. What do you like? What do you not like? And even if they don't want to talk, just sitting with them. Like if they're playing and they're coloring in and you say nothing, often they will volunteer information if they don't want to speak when you ask them questions. But like your proximity is so important. And I was saying to Melindy earlier, like connection before correction. You don't get to correct them if you don't know who they are. And then the second thing is knowing and engaging their parents. No one knows their kids as well as the parents do. They know what their kids are struggling with. They know what works and they know what doesn't work. And even if they don't know what works, even more so connect with them. Like, we don't know what our parents might be struggling with, how hard it must be for them to have a child that has special needs. And so, when we engage with them, we're building team child. And as soon as we build team child, parents show up and we win those parents. And those parents know other parents who have kids with special needs and they bring them to church. And the kingdom gets built, right? The parents often follow the child and not the child, the parents, especially in the case of a family with special needs, because that is just the way their family is structured. They often have suggestions that we haven't thought of, right? Because they've figured it out through trial and error of 7 years of this kid's life. And they need praise as well. Tell the parents when the kid did well today, when the kid was kind, when the kid was funny. Tell them the kid read from the Bible or gave a hug to a friend or offered to pray. Like, these parents need to know their kids are engaging and doing well. And when you have the parents on your side, then you can go and say, Piet Pompey's had a bad day today. Piet Pompey's cried because this and this and this happened. I'm sorry that happened. Can you tell me what you do when this happens at home? Or please be aware that I had to have a hard talk with him. Know that we love him and we want to help. But if you're not building a relationship with the parents, you also have no right to have, or they're going to feel you have no right to have that conversation. Especially because you see their kid an hour every Sunday and they see their kid every day of their lives, right? Then knowing being aware of our space. So I know that space is a limited resource for a lot of people, but a few things that is really, really useful. Offering a quiet space where children can go when they're overstimulated. Often our kids with ADHD and or ASD is just the short word for autism spectrum disorder, there's so much stimulation on a Sunday morning. There's sound and music and screaming and colors and smells and sights and everything. And I mean, I am an extrovert of extroverts and I get overstimulated. So I can't imagine what a kid who is already seeing the world in hyper 3D is feeling. Use visual schedules. So if you have access to a video or a thing, great. Have a countdown. Say, okay, we're going to start kids' church in 3 minutes and have it count down. If not, make a poster or have a little sing song or do a little thing that you do every week. But help the kids with visuals so that they are aware of what's happening at all times. And then another thing is, when you have a space, try to keep that space consistent. If you can, limit visual noise. So we don't want a kids' church to be droog. But you also want to be aware of visual noise as a thing. So, for example, if you're going to do something really loud visually, let's say you're doing a series and you want to put posters up, warn the kids. Tell them there's going to be posters. It's going to be really pretty. You can go feel, you can go touch, whatever, but make them aware of that, and then try to keep it consistent, because change really does hinder children with special needs. And then by showing up. And I'm speaking to the wrong crowd, so you can tell them I said this. You have to be in church. You can't come on a Sunday when you serve and then not be in church. Those kids need to see that you're in church. They need to know your faces, even on the Sundays you're not serving, because that's how you become a consistent in their lives. And the more consistent you are in their lives, the easier it is for you to help navigate the Sunday experience. Greeting outside of the classroom, the space. The space. You can take the teacher out of the classroom, but you can't make her drink water or so, ne? Greeting outside of church, right? Or greeting outside of the kids' church. Like when you see them downstairs and you're not serving, hi, Piti, how are you doing? How's that Lego thing you're building? Or like, how was that soccer game you played? Or whatever. Like greeting them so that they know who you are. And then I also said, it was so cool because I was thinking of the song that you played when I wrote this. So the Lord is good, man. I didn't even pray, but we'll pray at the end, it's fine. So you have to be fed yourself. You can't show up for a kid who might be empty if you are empty. We are being filled to be poured out. And you are poured out at the end of a Sunday. You all know that. You are exhausted at the end of a Sunday. And then everyone's like, oh, how hard can it? Come do it. Come do it. Jokes. Everyone knows kids' church is the hardest ministry. That's not true. Sound. No, I'm joking. So it's important to show up to your relationship to God as well, so that you're not trying to be God, so that God is just flowing out of you, and the kids can see that. We mustn't forget the supernatural, hey? Like he's so faithful in his showing up, and his spirit is so present. But we have to be aware that his spirit empowers us. And if we come here thinking we have everything sorted out and we know and our prep is done, then we've lost the battle. We have to come here knowing we've done everything, and now the Holy Spirit can work. So that's the macro scale. Those are the things outside of the classroom. What are the things we do in the classroom? In the space. The first one is we're staying calm. Pray before the time. Ask your team to pray. Ask Big Church to pray. Your peace is the tone for the students, for the kids, right? Your peace sets the tone for how the session is going to go. And often our kids with special needs peace. They need an anchor in the room when everyone else is playing and running around. If you are just by your presence an anchor, they already feel safer. Then we correct privately and we praise publicly. You never scold, especially a kid with special needs in front of the group. You don't tell them sit up straight, because they didn't think of that. They're not, so we have bean bags. And our special needs kids, they often will be under the beanbag. Because the beanbag is comforting and it's a sensory experience and it feels lekker. Even me, I like to be under the beanbag. That says something about me, but it's fine. So you don't go and say, sit on the beanbag. You're on it or you're not. Like, that kid didn't think of it. That kid was just trying to self-regulate. And now you've embarrassed the child instead of including them. And then also consider if you need to scold them in that moment. If they need to be sitting on the beanbag, can they learn from under the beanbag? Probably. So it's fine, right? But we can correct privately. So back to that 7-year-old who's obsessed with the grade 7-year-old, ne? You can go and say, hey, Johnny, Pity, Kyle, I think so-and-so needs a bit of space. Why don't you come? But you don't have to scold from across the room. It's not useful. Praise publicly, though. Yo, Johnny, you're doing such a good job. Look at your jumping stars. I don't know, jumping exercise. Look at this thing that you've done. Praise publicly. Build their confidence. They're already experiencing the world different to other kids. And so their confidence is probably being built on the fact that they're not measuring up to what the world wants them to measure up to. So here, we remind them who they are. Keep instructions short, clear, and kind. I personally struggle with this one because I love the sound of my own voice. Don't remember that. Okay, so students with ADHD and ASD struggle to follow more than one-step instructions, especially at a younger developmental age. So maybe your 13-year-olds can do 2-step instructions, but definitely not your 7, 8, 9-year-olds, 1-step instructions. That means sit on the mat. Not sit on the mat, take out your Bible and have a conversation with your friends. They will do the first one, or none of them, because they're overwhelmed by the idea of instruction. Okay? Short, clear instruction. It is an adjustment, because we're adults. So we're used to our bosses giving us an email of like 50 things to do, and we just do it. But these are students who, especially with both ASD and ADHD, have struggle with executive functioning, meaning they struggle with a list of things to do. I, for example, struggle with executive functioning, so I never tell my students to draw a line under anything. If my students weren't 18-year-olds and already knew to draw a line, there would be no lines in their books, because it wasn't their teacher telling them to draw the line, because I don't think of those things. So we have to plan to think of the things that these kids are not going to think of. First, because they're kids, and second, because that part of their brain is taking a bit longer to develop, right? And then pay attention to your transitions. Oftentimes, we underestimate the importance of announcing what we're doing next. Surprises freak out special needs kids. So we have to be aware of, are we transitioning? And even if that is a 10-second transition, saying, we're going to sit on the mat in 3, 2, 1. At least that gives their brain a little bit of processing time. And these are easy, like, to implement things. You just have to actually sit down and do it. Like, put that in. I would even suggest here typing up a resource and adding it to every lesson you're sending to your volunteers and saying, remember these things for these kids. Okay. All right. Then, sensory corners, bins, and toys. I said clay. My mom used to make clay for us out of flour and salt. I don't think those things are too expensive. You can buy it and you can make it and put it in a box, and you don't even have to color it. If it's white, it's fine. Shame. Koop maar bietjie kleersel. But have something sensory, right? That they can play with, that they can touch, that they can feel. Maybe if you're on mats, have the kids sit on the floor in clay so that they can press it in if they need to. Sensory bins are a really good thing if you have access to maybe, not with the tots, but with the older kids, like a bin with plastic balls in it, where they can just stick their hand in. That feeling of texture really calms them down, which allows them to focus better, allows them to engage with what you're saying. And then toys, foam toys, things like that. Then self-regulation. Often, we want to regulate. Because we are navigating 30 kids in front of us, and we're trying to tell the gospel, and we're trying to make sure that they learn and become better people, and, and like all before the parents come stand here and watch you do it, and just like get everything done before we have to play 20 minutes of Simon Says. So what's important is kids can self-regulate. They can, especially our kids who are 10, 11, 12. They've already learned self-regulation techniques. But we want to regulate them before they are self-regulating. If you're in a circle and your one kid with ASD is doing backflips behind the circle, let the kid do the backflips. They will find their way back. Unless it is distracting the whole group, in which case you privately go and talk to them. But for the most part, they aren't distracting. Our kids are, or let me put it this way, the kids are used to them. So allow them to self-regulate. Often they'll want to join the group again. They just needed a minute of wieging or lying under the thing. Am I making sense? Okay, then including the whole class. Now, I'm not saying have a conversation in front of the whole class. That's definitely not what I'm saying. I'm saying the kids are going to get irritated. Let's say a new kid joins and this kid has ASD. And this kid is shouting or wieging, or what is the nice English word? Rocking, yes, thank you, rocking. Or this kid is hugging too tightly or climbing into that red box. It's not, that never happened, Melindy. I don't know what you're talking about. We definitely didn't have to pull that kid out of there that one Sunday. So that the kids might do those things, and then the other students are going to get frustrated. And or you're going to have a special way to speak and or navigate that kid that's different to the rest of the class. Don't have a conversation with the whole class, but if it comes up, say it. Tell the kids, this kid needs something else. Just like you need your soccer gear washed on a Friday because you play on a Saturday, and your sister needs her netball stuff washed on a Tuesday because she plays on a Wednesday. We all have different needs at different times. And this is an incredible opportunity for building leadership, compassion, and showing them what it looks like to lay down your life for one's friends. This is an opportunity for them to step up and imitate the heart of Jesus. So it's important for us to allow them to do that, and it builds a culture of inclusivity. Then the buddy system. So if you are fortunate enough to have enough volunteers, or you have a bustling youth, or you have some 12-year-olds in your class who are getting a little edgy in the class, buddy them up with someone who has maybe particular special needs. And they are their buddy, and they sit with them, and they play with them, and they relay the message to them. And you give them, the buddy, the opportunity to lead, and you trust them with their friend. But also, you give that kid with special needs the opportunity to be heard and to be seen and to be loved. This doesn't always work, obviously, because we all have limited resources, but if you can, do it. And if you see a deep need in your church, put it out there. Put it on the slide on Sunday and say, we need buddies for our special needs ministry. And then last but not least, allowing some flexible seating. Oftentimes our kids with ASD and ADHD don't want to sit on a chair or don't want to sit on a mat. Now, if you have the option of flexible seating, great. We have the bean bags and the mat, and for the older kids, we allow them on the chairs, although we're not that, but anyway. But if you don't, and this kid wants to lay flat down, let them lay down. This isn't school. And they mustn't feel like it's school. Because at the end of the day, we're not disciplining them into loving God. We are introducing them to a God who already loves them, and because he loved them, they can love him back. Celebrate participation, not just performance. If they are clapping their hands and sitting down but listening to the worship song, that's enough. If they are coloring in the craft and it's going everywhere, but you are having a conversation with them, that's enough. That's enough. the seeds are being planted and watered by the Holy Spirit and not by us. We are just the vessels, and so we celebrate the small wins. And then finally, offer simple choices. Oftentimes the best navigation or like management in class is saying, do you want to sit on the mat or on the beanbag? Do you want to color with a crayon or with a Koki? Even if they didn't want to do it, the fact that they feel there's a sense of autonomy is going to empower them enough to want to participate. So simple choices, and that's an easy way to change your language, because there's often simple choices, right? And where the kids who have better executive functioning, they can make those choices for themselves. Often the kids who don't struggle to even know what their options are. So if you limit it, it makes them feel, first of all, like they're in control, so there's less anxiety about it. But second of all, they feel like they've chosen this instead of it being forced on them. And then finally, grace, grace, grace. Grace firstly with yourself. You're going to mess up. You're going to make a kid cry probably at some point in your children's ministry, Neleti. Or the kid is just going to cry and you are not going to know what to do because why is the kid crying, right? So grace with yourself. We're all still learning. And a lot of us grew up in homes where special needs was not a thing that we spoke about. It was not a thing that was a thing. We grew up in cultures where that was not a thing. So we're all still learning how to navigate. We're all still figuring out when is a kid naughty because they are a 12-year-old boy and they have too much energy, and when is a kid naughty because they have dysregulation problems, right? And so that's okay. Have grace with yourself. Then have so much grace with the kids. All of them. Have grace with the students who are maybe neurotypical and are struggling with their friends who aren't. Have grace with the kids who are neurotypical and are struggling to participate. And then finally have grace with your volunteers. They are offering their time and their resources, and they want to, and so they're also going to mess up. And the idea is not that you know and they don't, or I know and you don't. The idea is that we're all still learning and growing. So we're going to do a little bit of practice because I am a teacher and that is the only way you learn. So I'd like you to split into groups of 3 or 4. Initially I thought maybe into your own groups, but now I think we'll learn more from each other if we're different every nation. So if you can, groups of 3 or 4, maybe try and get a few every nations in there. As a group, I'm now going to give you multiple steps, but they will be on the board so you can refer back. As a group, discuss some of the challenges you face with regards to inclusivity in the classroom. Share one thing that you have used or done that has really helped your class. I have put down this slideshow, but there are people in this room who have so much wisdom because they have that one kid that's challenged them and made them grow in wisdom, right? Discuss one adjustment you can make and how. It's always good, one step. And then I'd also like you to pray. Pray for each other, pray for your ministry, pray for your kids,